Hi everyone, thanks for watching. I'm making this video very early in the morning. The sun hasn't even come up yet, so it's kind of dark in here, but it's one of those videos where you don't really require a lot of light because it's not visuals really we're talking about. It's mostly things that I'm saying, so excuse me because I'm just getting up and my voice is a little hoarse yet and stuff. I wanted to make this video mainly as a reaction to some of the comments that were in my last video where I talked about the album Physical Graffiti by Led Zeppelin. It was a first time spin. I don't know how many I'm going to do in that series, because as some people have pointed out, and rightly so, to give an album its fair due, you really need to give it a chance, more than once. But sometimes I can like an album on the first listen right off the bat, which happened with a review I did before that one, an Elvis from Memphis album. So you never know. But the thing is that I was inspired because of some of the comments from different people. A lot of people seem to have that common reaction. They said, you really need to give this album more time. This is not the kind of album that just immediately you take a liking to. It has to grow on you. What I've noticed that's interesting about this remark is it's something I've said too. I can understand that. I can relate to that because I myself have often said that. I mean, I've been on message boards where, and recently within the last year or so, there was a young girl. I think she was maybe, I forget her age, 20, 21. And she was just getting into the Beatles. She had never listened to the Beatles, and she was listening to them. She was going by every album one by one. And as she went along, she was saying, like a so-called, great album like Revolver. She would listen to Revolver, and she'd be like, yeah, well, I like this song, I like that song. This was okay, this was not okay. And it was kind of funny because I could relate to what some of you people were saying on my video with the Led Zeppelin album. I was saying to her, well, you need to give it another listen. You're just listening once. So I can relate. That's my problem. That's my point about this. It's not that something I can't relate to. I can relate to what you're saying. But here's my take on the situation. At the same time, I find that, this is me speaking just for myself. I'm getting older. I mean, I'm not an old man, but I'm getting older. And you get to a point in your life as you get older, I think, maybe some of you out there can relate to this, you start to realize that you probably have lived more years already behind you than you're going to live in the future. And life is very short, So because it's short, how much time do you really have to play albums over and over and over again until you, quote unquote, get them? You don't really have that much time. I mean, if you look behind you, you can see I got bookcases here. There's a lot of DVD and Blu-ray movies. I always say, in addition to my record collection over here, I also am a big movie fan. And there's movies that I watch once and I have no use for seeing a second time. Some movies I'll watch twice. Same thing with records, You start to realize there's just not enough time left. Some of you may know what I mean. If I was 17 years old, that would be a different story. But, now it's just, life is too short to spend spinning an album or watching a movie. But we're talking about albums here in this for this particular channel. I think life is too short to keep spinning the same album over and over and over again until it clicks. You have to like it. You have to get it. It has to appeal to you. You can't just let it go with one spin or two spins. No, play it over and over and over again until it sinks in and damn it, you like the album. Well, I don't see it that way, to be honest with you. And one album I'll bring up is the Beach Boys' classic album, Pet Sounds. I played that album once and people were telling me you need to give it another try. It's a great album, you got to give it another try. I really disliked the album as a whole the first time so much that I personally didn't want to give it another spin. But later on, I did give it a second spin. Believe it or not, I did, and I'm talking about with an open mind. You know, I wasn't shutting my mind off to this. I'm talking about an open mind, and it just didn't appeal to me the second time. And now, am I supposed to sit there and say, well, if it takes 3 spins, if it takes 17, if it takes 48 spins, you got to listen to this until that sinks into your consciousness and until you appreciate it for what it is? No, life's too short. But there's more to this that I want to talk about. Let me start along those lines by talking about, I'll just go back to the movies just for a moment. You know, being a movie fanatic, I mean, I've seen a lot of movies in the theater. Some of you may be familiar with or maybe not, with a Quentin Tarantino movie called Kill Bill. I went to see, it came in 2 parts, Kill Bill Volume 1, Kill Bill Volume 2. Now, the first movie, Kill Bill Volume 1, I went to see it in the theater, and I really liked the movie. I mean, I enjoyed the movie. It was a fun time. It wasn't great cinema, great cinematic art, but it was a fun time, and I enjoyed it. Then, later on, Kill Bill Volume 2 came into the theaters, and it was so different from Kill Bill 1 that I was underwhelmed on the first view. I remember thinking, man, I don't enjoy this as much as I did the first one. The first one was a lot of martial arts craziness. The second one was more of a backstory. Well, here's the crazy thing about it in a positive sense. People are going to think that I'm nuts when I say this, but people who enjoy movies might understand. Through some kind of weird circumstances, I wound up seeing Kill Bill Volume 2 several more times in the theater with different people, different friends. There were times when I wanted to kill in the afternoon. There was nothing else playing, so I went to see Kill Bill 2 again. And I saw Kill Bill 2 now several times, a lot of times. Let's put it that way. It holds my personal record for most films viewed in the theater the most amount of times. And the second, third, fourth, etc. time, every time I saw that, I was in love with it. I now love Kill Bill Volume 2 way better than Volume 1. There's so much more substance and nuance to it, and feeling and emotion. There's so much more to the second movie that I never noticed the first time out. I completely missed it. It went over my head. So I know exactly what people are talking about, and I feel very fortunate that the luck of the draw just happened, that circumstances presented themselves to the point where I had to see Kill Bill Volume 2 several times. It just worked out that way, and now it's one of my all-time favorite films. The whole thing combined, 1 and 2 as one big thing. I didn't mean to, go off on a tangent here with movies, but I'm just trying to illustrate. The same thing holds true for records, I guess. Sometimes through, a certain set of circumstances, you get exposed to something more. But had I not seen Volume 2 over and over again, I never would have really loved it as much as I do. Because, especially with movies, I think movies even more than music, movies have a lot of things you could miss the first time out. Or you might not be in the right frame of mind or whatever. And you really pick up things, say, well, I didn't notice that the first time. I didn't realize that line. So anyway, but back to music. The one thing that I wanted to bring up with that is, what criteria also do we have that makes us want to play an album over and over and over and over and over again? Now, I think that's up to the individual, right? I wonder if any of you would agree out there. Whether or not we as individuals feel or deem, I like to say the word deem, whether we deem an album worthy of multiple plays, that's up to the individual. And I'll give you an example with that. Now, of course, it's no surprise to any of you watching me that I'm a big Beatles fan, and I'm a big solo Beatles fan. Let's take the solo Beatles, for example. Let's use just one. Let's use Paul McCartney. He's got the most albums. He's probably the most popular right now. Paul McCartney, I've been collecting his albums and listening to his new releases. Excuse me, I got like an itch in my nose here. I've been collecting a McCartney album, or listening to McCartney albums, since I was a teenager. And there's a situation where I can tell you, almost always, not 100%, but 95% of the time, whenever Paul McCartney would come out with a new album and I would play his albums, almost always I didn't feel much the first time. So I can, again, I've been there. I know what you're talking about. So I remember, like, even any of his albums, Tug of War, which is turned out to be, one of his best albums. I remember listening to that one in 1982, and I was this kid, 20 years old, and I thought to myself, this doesn't grab me at all. There's nothing on here really. I mean, a couple of songs, but it's ridiculous now to think that looking back on it, I really didn't like it much on first listen. Same holds true for any of Paul's albums, really. I mean, Chaos and Creation in the Backyard, which is a very good album. Flaming Pie, which is a very good album. I can go on and on. Even his newest album that was released 3 years ago, called New, from 2013. I heard it the first time and I liked a couple of songs, but I was thinking, well, there's not really anything catchy here. There's no catchy hooks or choruses or anything. And now I'm like, are you crazy? I'm asking myself, did I really believe that? Did I really think that? Because now I love the new album. I've played it many times, and it's become in my top 5 of all of Paul McCartney's albums. And Paul has, I don't know how many albums, 20-something albums maybe by now, in the 20s. It's one of my top 5. But there's other albums that I've played multiple times that I can't stand. I can't stand Paul's Press to Play album. I can't stand Paul's Driving Rain album, and I played those several times to get it, to put it in my head. And you have to. Trying to make this shorter than I want to, because I could talk here for a half an hour, but I want to make it shorter than rather than longer. My point I'm trying to make here is, and I welcome your feedback on this, is don't you think that there's certain reasons why we listen to albums over and over again? Now, take the Led Zeppelin album, the Physical Graffiti album, which I didn't like on first listen. There's no reason, personally, for me as an individual, that I feel that I have to play that again. I like Kashmir and Houses of the Holy off that album very much. I mean, Kashmir and Houses of the Holy I'll play many times. Side 2 of that album I love. I'll play it many times. The rest, I think that you have to have a reason, some kind of vested interest. And what are those vested interests? What are the reasons why you play an album multiple times? Well, let's think of a few. Number one, some people would say, if an album is considered a classic album, a great album, if it's always in Rolling Stone's top 100 albums or top 10 albums, top 50 albums, maybe that's an album that requires more attention. It requires more than just one spin. Same thing with a movie. If a movie is considered in the AFI top 100 list, maybe those movies require more views and more respect than just ordinary movies that aren't considered great movies. That's a valid point. That's one reason to play an album more than once. If it generally has a good reputation, like Pet Sounds has a great reputation, so maybe it's worthy to hear it more than once. But then again, the second thing would be, as I said before about the Paul McCartney album, so if there's an artist you like, you owe it to yourself to give it more of a fair shot. In other words, again, Paul McCartney, I'm a Beatles fan, I'm a solo Beatles fan. To me, every time an album comes out by John, Paul, George, or Ringo, as a fan, I feel I owe it to myself, and I'm also genuinely interested and passionate about it enough that I want to try to learn every album, you see. I want to play every album again at one time, get a first impression, but then again and again, play it several times, because as somebody who is passionate about the Beatles and solo Beatles, I feel I owe it to myself to become familiarized with that album and also to learn it. You want to learn the album, and you can't always do that with a new release on first listen. So sometimes when you love an album right out of the gate, terrific, all the better. Nothing like it. Nothing like loving an album right off the bat. But some of them do require multiple spins. But you have to decide for yourself what warrants the attention, because life is short. That's the way I look at it. For me, I'm likely to listen to an artist that one of my favorite artists of all time. I kind of feel it's worth putting in the effort and the time to become familiarized with the album. Somebody that I don't really have much interest in, I'm cool with playing an album one time and saying, I didn't really like that album on first listen. I have no desire to even play it again. I'm cool with that when it's somebody, there's no vested self-interest in it, if you know what I'm trying to get at. You know, I feel like I'm missing another. There's another point. I know there's another point, but I can't think of what it is. Anyway, it'll come to me as I'm talking. So I really would like to hear people's comments on this. Please feel free to comment. Please feel free, some of you who make videos, to make a video reply to this if you like. I love video responses, and let me be, make sure I'm aware of the responses. Okay, I remember the other thing that I wanted to bring up. Another factor for playing an album more than once, or even watching a movie more than once, is that if you have, and this is my opinion, if you have something in there that at least has a good taste to it, like you can tell, I didn't really love the album, but there was something about it, that there were some good songs on there, and I kind of got a feeling that there was something that could be expanded upon. You know what I mean? If you listen to an album and you really hate the album and you can't stand it, and you felt like there was nothing redeeming about it that even would make you even dream about giving it a second chance, let alone a third or fourth chance, then why bother? But if there was a foundation there was something there to work with. That's the way I would describe it. You feel like, I didn't love that album. Maybe I didn't even like the album, but there was still something there that I think it can be worked on. There was enough there that I think that with more tries, I'm going to really appreciate it fully. There has to be that too. Sometimes that's a incentive for playing an album more than once. Same thing with watching a movie more than once. You can tell something that you just hate. There's no way multiple listens you're ever going to like this thing. And there's other albums where you can find that there's a germ or a bud of a flower in there, better put, for something that maybe will appeal with revisits. Another thing that I noticed, with some of the comments, is that obviously the people who feel that one-time spin wasn't enough, and the environment in which you're listening to the records is not really conducive to a full experience and to properly engage the album. They wouldn't think that if you like the album the first time, that's what's ironic about it. If you like the album, a first time worked good for you, and the environment was good. I mean, you either like it or we don't, and we have to make our own choices as to, as I said earlier, what is the reason that we personally feel we have to spend more time of our lives given this more time. I mean, in the case of Zeppelin, Physical Graffiti, that album, it's 4 sides. I mean, that's a lot of effort to put into there over and over again. But I also wanted to say, just this has to do with responding to some of the comments in that video. I had a friend. He was a movie friend, and we would get together and watch movies every now and then. And he'd bring over some movies, like say he brought over like a Western, and we'd watch the movie. And after it was over, he said, "What did you think?" And if I was honest with him and said, "Well, I really didn't care for it," he'd just dismiss me and say, "Well, that's okay. I guess you just don't like Westerns. That's all." Oh, really? Because I didn't like your Western, that means I don't like Westerns. Same thing happened here. As someone said, "You're just not a fan of hard rock." I didn't like Led Zeppelin, Physical Graffiti, therefore, well, you're just not a fan of hard rock at all, he said. Now, I mean, we talked about it in the comments, and we understood each other, and he explained himself, and we worked it out. So I always appreciate, honest comments, as long as they're not too off the charts and nasty. But people tend to do that. My friend would do the same thing. We'd watch a movie that's a drama, and maybe he loved it, and it was an acclaimed drama, and if I didn't like it, he'd go, "Well, I guess you just don't like dramas," And he wasn't saying that to play with me or to kid me. He really believed it. If you don't like this, you don't like Western. If you don't like this record, you don't like hard rock. If you don't like this movie, I guess you just don't like comedies. Then that's all. Really. Because if I don't like your movie, I call these reviews first time spin. A first spin. And that's the idea behind it. I want that to be clear too. I'm not really doing a dedicated, in-depth review of an album. Whenever I have one of these little videos that's called First Spin, all that means is that's my initial rough impression right out of the gate, which could be positive or negative. It's not an in-depth review. I mean, when I do something like the solo Beatle album reviews, I mean, those are albums that I've listened to multiple times that I've really gotten to know. And sometimes I'll do a first impression of a new solo Beatle release, but for the most part, when I'm putting down a dedicated review, I'll familiarize myself more with the record, okay? More than just one initial impression. Please keep that in mind if you watch any of my reviews that are called. There's the word reviews I used again. Not reviews. They're just initial impressions. That's why I don't use the title review in it. It's just the first impression. It's a first spin reaction. So thanks again for watching and indulging me, and I hope to hear your comments. And like I said, come on, make a video, you guys. I know some of you like to, what do they call this, a tag? You know, video tag. Thanks again.